I'm gonna share with you the rules that made me so rich that I questioned the meaning of making money. These rules are what allowed me to go from a broke 22-year-old to a multi-millionaire today. Some of these rules I picked up on my own during my 26-year career as an entrepreneur, and others I learned from some of the highest net worth individuals you probably know. So without any further explanation, these are the 14 rules of money. The first rule is kind of obvious, but it's to spend less than you make. You know, Dave Ramsey likes to say, act your wage. And I love that. Think about it. It's what you make, but you got to act proportionate to what it is. It's not your salary that makes you rich. It's your spending habits. You know, my dad used to say, it's not what you make, it's what you keep that'll make you rich. When I started off, I was a horrible spender. I remember I was just trying to kind of live life. I never thought I'd ever have money. So when I started making money, it was a bit carpe diem, you know, seize the day, YOLO. Remember at 21, I got a check for almost $20,000 for working a month. I was a consultant, I was on contract, and it all showed up in my bank account. And my little brother Mo showed up and I said, hey man, let's go on a ski trip. It's right around Christmas time when we decided to splurge. Over a 10-day period that he was visiting, I spent $13,000 on snowboard gear and paying for drinks for friends and crazy hotel rooms and eating like a king. It was one of the most ridiculous weeks ever. There was like, everything was an option. We kept spending the money. And at the end of it, I talked to my dad. He said, Dan, did you put any money aside for taxes? And I said, nope. And that was the day that I got introduced to Norm. And Norm was my accountant. And what he said is, how about we put you on a salary, but what do you need to live? And I was like, well, my expenses are covered. Let's do $60,000 a year and everything else we'll put in the bank account. And that one decision allowed me to save the seed money I needed to eventually start the company that made me a multimillionaire. So at the start, the most important thing is to live off as little as possible and reinvest in yourself, reinvest in your business, reinvest in your future. So most people would say that you want to put 50% towards needs. You know, you got to live, you got to eat. You got 30% towards wants. Right? So that brings it 80% and then 20% towards savings. High level, think about it. So all consuming and living, you want to be at 80%, save the rest. Which brings us to the second rule, which is to pay yourself first. This one's tough. Some people feel like all their money's got to go out first. I got to help other people before I ever help myself. Here's what I know. You are actually the most important asset, not a house, a car, a watch, an investment. It is you. I remember back in 2009, I was talking to my business partner, Ethan, and we had a major issues we had to solve in the business. And I asked him to meet me at the office, and he said he couldn't. Now, we had just raised $1 million from some of the top investors in San Francisco, and we were building out the team, and we ran into an issue with our product. And I said, why can't you meet? He's like, hey man, I've got to get some laundry done. Okay, I know it's Sunday, dude, but you can do your laundry on any other day. And he said, yeah, but if I don't do it this, I got a plan and da 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 da. And I'm like, man, on your way to work, there are literally 3 different laundromats that do wash and fold. Like they'll do it for like $35. It's like, yeah, man, I'm not really paying myself enough. I'm barely making rent. So here's a situation where we just raised $1 million to build the business and he can't come work on the business because he's too busy doing laundry. The issue, he wasn't paying himself enough to essentially invest in things that would buy back his time so him and I could actually go jam to solve the problem. See, most people stay broke because they're trading time for money. What I'm going to encourage you to consider is invest time for skills to get paid more, then buy more time to reinvest in learning new skills that make you more money. See, most people spend time to save money. I like to spend money to save time. Once I've got that time, then I invest it in acquiring new skills that allows me to become more valuable. Then I get to make more money to then buy time to invest in more skills. That is the equation. I remember one time I was talking to one of my coaching clients, Brad Redding. He had an incredible company and he was kind of burnt out and he wanted to sell it. I said, you could, and you know the price and people will buy it from you today. Or you take some of the profit you're making instead of reinvesting in more software developers and marketing teams and all that stuff, just pay yourself more so you can enjoy life a little bit better. I said, just make a list of things that you would love to do. And he put on there, you know, I'd like a gym in my house. I'd love to be able to hire somebody to take care of the kids. We can get date nights. So we were only talking a few $1,000s a month. And I said, if you could invest in you to give you more time to build the business bigger, that dollar amount today is going to turn into millions of dollars in a few years. And that's exactly what happened. So the way Brad bought back his time and his energy is that not only did he have time to work on key things, spend time with his wife, but he got the energy back by not having to worry about not spending enough time with his family, not going on date nights, taking care of his health. I mean, he's literally transformed his body from where he was to where he is today because he made an investment in himself. If you pay yourself first, you force yourself to find resources to cover other expenses. Which brings us to number 3, which is to assign your priorities. Oprah Winfrey once said, you can have it all, just not all at once. I mean, it's kind of like you can do anything, you just can't do everything. When people see me today, they go, wow, Dan, you do so many things. But if you actually look over the last 25 years of my career, I've only done one thing, and that's software. I started off as a programmer, then I went to consulting, then I built companies, and now I deploy capital, the 4 C's, coding, consulting, companies, and capital, into technology, into software. Essentially, I started off and I wrote code and I learned how to build apps, and then I ended up starting a company and I sold people the applications that I was building, and then I did that 3 times in a row. And then I decided, well, now I'm going to start investing in other companies, and I did that, and now I buy companies, but they're all in the software space. So I want to teach you a big idea that a lot of people get wrong when they start to try to make their first $1 million, which is don't diversify except for globally or investments. Don't get distracted. Most people end up saying yes to things they should be saying no to, and no the things they should be saying yes to, because they don't know what is their primary aim and focus. And if you do this right, then you become the tip of the spear at what you do. Tip of the spear means best in class. I like to say world class. I think you should be top 5 in what you do, which sounds crazy. I know if you're an editor or a logo designer or even a singer, you're like, that's just not me. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It just takes a decision. And if you go all in, you say, I'm going to be one of the best programmers. I'm going to be one of the best designers. I'm going to be one of the best editors. What you do is you start getting better and better and better. And then you get this thing called the 4 levels of luck that one of my mentors, Naval Ravikant, talks about all the time. First level is just dumb luck. Just random moments and opportunities show up in your life, and those are just like dumb luck. The second level is grit luck. This is by doing the work, the luckier you get, right? People talk about this all the time. The third is skilled luck, meaning that you're getting so skilled at what you do, people know you for that, so they ask you for opportunities that otherwise it looks lucky to everybody else, but to you, you're like, no, it's just because I'm really skillful at this thing. And then you end up getting to others' luck, which is the tip of the spear, like the Warren Buffetts and the Oprahs and the Elon Musk, where they're brought opportunities that is other people's skilled luck, meaning that people get lucky in opportunities and they're like, I like Warren so much, I want to partner with him to do this deal. That's when things get really crazy. Those are the 4 levels of luck that most people never understand. The key for this step is you got to stick to what is your unfair advantage in the market. Invest in something you know, don't get distracted. Some of you are really great at building houses and you're like, I want to go into software. I would argue go make a lot of money in houses first. Or some of you guys are into software and you're like, hey, I should get into real estate. How about you stick to software and get really good at it? And trust me, you will find real estate investors that will partner to build out a massive portfolio with you if you go get rich. I understand that it's fun to do new things and there's excitement, but don't make those where you make your money. Call those hobbies and go have fun and explore, and don't put the pressure around it having to perform. See, a lot of people get distracted because they take their money they saved up and they go put it on new things, and then they're freaking out when the thing's not working out. So they're sacrificing both their current business and the new business, and both suffer. Which brings us to number 4, which is to have a ripcord budget. Jim Rohn once said, never begin the day until you finish it on paper. Same in life. You should plan for success and you should plan for worst case, so that way you build a plan around both and you never have to think about it. And when they're going great or there's an issue, you can go back to the plan. You could lose it all. You could find out they changed some law. You could get hit by a bus. And my philosophy is that you have to plan for it. Have a disaster recovery plan. I learned this back when we were building data centers with my software company. If the power went down in the room, you had the backup generators kick in and it took over. The challenge is you had to have the checklist already designed so that when it happened, you got to stay cool, calm, and collected. Nobody was running around freaking out like, oh, did anybody put the diesel in the generator? You tested it every once in a while and you made sure you had the checklist ready to go. Why is this important? Because it allows you to move incredibly fast and even harder, knowing that if at any point of moving fast in a direction something happens, you've already made the decision on how you're going to react. There's no wasted brain cycles around fear, concern, challenges, worry. My business coach, Ed Milet, has this great saying. He says, worry is a wasted use of your imagination. I think most times because we haven't built a plan, we're always worrying about what could happen. How about you just decide to do if it does, and you get back to building your life. So there's two categories you want to look at. There's the business side and the personal side. Most people will say in business, you want to have at least 3 months of operating expenses. Some will say 6 months, but honestly, I've never seen a scenario where you need that much. As long as you're fast to respond to issues, then yeah, you might need 6 months or more. On the personal side, 6 months of overhead is what you want to have ready, liquid, in cash, so that if anything happens to you, you lose your job, your business goes to zero, the family won't be impacted, and there's no scenario I've seen where an individual couldn't rebound within 6 months if they had the fortitude and the mental focus to just get back in there and find an opportunity. You need to save to weather the storm, because on every economic downside that's ever happened, there's this crazy upswing on the back end. It's like a slingshot. So you want to be ready to go through tough times because you built the plan so that you can come out like a rocket ship. Which brings us to number 5, which is give to get. Anne Frank once said, "No one ever became poor by giving." I love this so much. Literally, it's like my ethos in life. I wake up every day asking myself, how can I create more value for other people than anybody else in their life? That is just a fun place to get to, where you wake up and you're just giving. So here's a funny story to give you a little bit more color. A couple years ago, I realized I had been hoarding credit card points. I don't know why, it just became this fun game that I play with myself. I put credit cards in all my companies for all the ads they run and all these other scenarios, and I was collecting millions of points per year, but I never used them. I've done this with, Starbucks points as well at the coffee shop. I don't know why I just got into this hoarding mentality. And I realized that this hoarding behavior was holding me back. So this year, I woke up, I'm Martell, my assistant, I said, we are going to spend all of it. I'm going to use all the coffee points, I'm going to use all the travel points. Any points that I've been hoarding is going to get spent. And here's why. I call this money velocity. See, the more you spend, the more opportunities you create. The more you spend, the more you learn. The more you spend, the more you can get in returns because you're making good investments. See, I use the word spend, but don't get it confused. It's about putting money in the market, being part of the economy. The more time and money exchanges hands, the more value is created in the world. See, money is energy, and if you hoard it, it will find its way away from you. If you spend it, it creates more energy, comes back to you, and allows you to do bigger things with it. Most people think I'm supposed to save, but they don't invest. I know I did that for a long time. I looked at my bank account and I just kept saving. It was in a savings account, but it wasn't doing anything. At one point I had millions of dollars. My banker was like, "Hey, do you want to do anything with this?" And I'm like, "Leave me alone, don't touch it." And they're like, "We could put it in a GIC." And I'm like, "Don't talk to me, I don't trust you." It's because I didn't know any better. Then I realized that if I take the money, I put it in the market, I put it into investments, I invest in myself, I invest in my team, I use it, I circulate it, it's a resource. And the more I use it, the more it's gonna come back, because I'm telling the world that I believe that it's a flow, it's an energy. It comes out, it comes back. It's just like the more you give, the more you get. That's how it works. If you hoard it, it will find its way away from you. If you hoard it, you're essentially telling the world it's a scarce resource. Don't give me more, because all I'm going to do is put it in a bucket. But if I say, hey, there's an unlimited amount of money out there and I'm going to put it out, it's going to come back, then I'm kind of learning, I'm earning, I'm creating opportunities and getting resources to do bigger things. Which brings us to number 6, which is to minimize borrowing. Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, once said, the only difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they use their time in debt. I would actually change the word debt to leverage. When I got my first apartment, I had to buy furniture for the place. So I went down to my local furniture shop, I sat down, I tested a bunch of different couches. I'm kind of a tall dude, so I need like a deep seat. And I finally found the set that I wanted. And the sales guy's like, hey, good news, we can offer financing. And I'm like, what does that look like? And he tells me this magical thing where I don't have to make a payment for like 4 years or something like that. Anyways, I decided to take it because there was no interest, blah, 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 and it just sounded awesome. The problem is by the time I had to start making payments, when you actually looked at the fine print and the interest rate kicked in, I ended up paying 4 times more for the furniture than if I would have just paid for it. And the truth was I was borrowing money to buy things that didn't make me money. So this is what I've learned about borrowing money. See, the banks make their money on the majority of the collecting of the debt and paying of interest. What I want you to consider is, how do you borrow money to make a return for yourself? It's to increase your earning potential, right? So in the short term, if you make an investment in your business, I want you to monitor the ROI, because you're still learning how to do it. You got to take shots on goal, small bullets, little tiny bullets. You take shots. You're like, hey, I'm going to spend some money, see if I get a return. These are ways to learn. Then if you figure it out, you want to shoot a cannonballs. See, most people when they start off, they like make these big investments in themselves, borrow money to go to a very expensive mastermind or invest in education or go to university. They don't get the return that they thought they would get. Borrow to invest in yourself. Don't borrow to invest in your lifestyle. That's where you're gonna get yourself in trouble. I could have easily bought used furniture. I did not need new stuff. I was trying to show everybody how cool I was. So my rule is if you can't afford it, go make more money to get it. You don't need new, you can buy old. Which brings us to number 7, which is to analyze the risk return ratios. Warren Buffett said, risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. Let me tell you about this crazy story. There's this investor named Bill Ackman. Back in the day, he took $27 million and he invested in a CDS, credit default swap. And that investment in I think a 12-month period turned into $2.7 billion. Let me tell you why this applies to you. See, he knew there was a chance that 27 could go down, not necessarily to zero. Real estate investors do this all day long. They find a property, they get it under contract, they borrow money for the deposit, they borrow private money to buy the place, they renovate it, they add the value, and then they go and they sell it to somebody else and they take the difference. I mean, they pay off the investors, they refinance it with the bank. Essentially, they have no personal guarantee, no money out of pocket, so the upside is unlimited from a cash-on-cash return because they had very little of their own money in the deal. So we're always looking for deals where we have asymmetrical risk, low downside, unlimited upside. But let me tell you about the risk quadrant. So on the left side, you have risk and on the bottom, you have returns. Then place your opportunity that you're looking at to make an investment and say, hey, Bitcoin would be a high risk, high return. Index funds would be low risk, low returns. And something that's a low return, high risk, well, that's a trick question. You wouldn't want to do that one. Buying a business or some real estate and improving the business or the real estate, that's called value add. That deal would look like a low risk, high return scenario, which brings us to number 8, which is to not fear money. Ayn Rand once said, wealth is the product of a man's capacity to think. I love that. See, we all have these money stories, these money beliefs. My buddy Ramit said he calls them money scripts. They're blueprints. There's the way we think about money. See, I had a weird one that I used to think that I needed to go bankrupt to be successful. I know, it's literally watch your life transform. That is the key. Which brings us to number 9, which is to avoid lifestyle creep. I once had this buddy, I met him at an event and I watched him make a lot of money very quick. And as he was playing this game of trying to keep up with the Joneses, his lifestyle just kept growing. He bought a new car, he upgraded his house, watches, pretty much everything. And eventually everything backfired on him and his business really suffered. And unfortunately, he was over leveraged and he didn't have the money to cover all of his payments. So he had to file for bankruptcy. You see, once you start making money, the game is here to try and live off as little as possible for as long as possible. Not to suffocate your ability to reinvest in yourself to make more money, but to just not be wasteful. Instead of buying the new BMW, invest in yourself or another business vehicle that could buy you 10 BMWs in the future. Some people think that compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe, but delayed gratification is even stronger. And that's why this money rule will make you rich if you're able to delay trying to reap the rewards too soon. You should get used to playing this game of spending as little as possible for as long as possible. Like all the Gucci and the fancy stuff. And look, I know a lot of people see me today with the jet and the cars and the house and all that stuff. But even today, I live off about 10% of my income because I'm reinvesting in other things that are going to make me money in the long term. And then over time, I live off of that cash flow. And I think everybody has the opportunity to do that if they learn how to play this money game. Which brings us to number 10, which is to build a personal P&L. So I was talking to one of my friends once, and he was telling me how he wanted a simple life. And this guy was wealthy. He didn't want too much stuff, too many things to manage. But here's the secret, and this is what I told him. The wealthiest people aren't managing their own estates. Dude, you can invest in having somebody to help you out. So I explained to him, when you have 2 or 3 or 4 homes like I do, then you have somebody manages it. I have a house manager named Betty. She is the CEO of everything in my personal life. Like any money that comes in, she manages the income, she manages the expenses that go out, and she manages the forecast and the budgets for all of those. So if anything gets out of whack, she's the first first one to say like, hey, why is the landscaping for, the properties more expensive than it should be? So I want to teach you this cool idea that most people have never heard when it comes to money. Just like in a business, your personal life should have its own profit and loss statement. I know. This is, some people are like, what are you talking about? If you think about it, your life is a business. You have a salary, you have income, and you have expenses. And I know most businesses have a CEO, a CFO, a COO to manage all this and financial projections and planning. And most people with money would maybe call this a financial planner or a family office, but I like to think it at a high level. I actually have my personal family affairs in my accounting software. I know, crazy idea, but why wouldn't you? It just makes it so much easier to manage. I want you to consider, if you get really good at managing money, you'll be able to make more money. Most people that are loosey-goosey on their financials, they'll never have the rigor and the maturity to be able to grow their personal net worth. Which brings us to number 11, which is high tides rise all boats. When it comes to making money, it requires a team. And I used to have a belief that if I trained a team, that eventually they would leave. I have my buddy Cameron Harold, incredible author. People would say to him like, what if you hire a bunch of people and you train them and then they leave? And he would joke, well, what if you don't and they stay? So what most people do is they hire less competent people because it feels more secure, because they're insecure about people leaving them. The challenge with that is this: B's and C's risk your A's. So think about anybody on your team today that might be great. If you hire somebody that makes them work harder, they're gonna get frustrated and they'll eventually leave. So if you're trying to rise the tide, if you're trying to increase the average of the people on your team, then you have to invest in your people. I know when things are good, it's easy to invest in them. The economy's good, I invest in my people. But honestly, even when they're not doing so well, just don't stop. It could be you training them, buying some training, making sure they feel supported. So the best way to keep people is to understand what their dreams and goals are. And my rule is your dreams and goals for your life have to be big enough for everybody else's to fit inside of, so that you can raise the tide and it brings them with you and they'll want to stay with you. You got to fix that mindset and watch your life transform. Which brings us to number 12, which is money is a tool, not the goal. Henry Ford once said, money is like an arm or a leg. Use it or lose it. I once heard that money is a tool. It's like a fork. It can either be used to nourish you or it could be used to take somebody's life, but it is not the goal of life. See, I became a multi-millionaire at 28 and then drifted for almost 2 years. I thought I had made it. I sold my company, I kind of retired, and then I realized that financial freedom means nothing, because the point of life is not actually about making money, it's about having a richer life. Money is just a tool that can do that. It can also not do that if you stress yourself out. If money is a primary reason that you make any decision, then you'll always make money the master. But if money is just a consideration, then you'll feel free. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you have $1 million or $100 million. Money is a store of value and needs to be put to work. The work is to buy you time, so you have options about how you want to spend it to become more valuable, ideally, so you can reinvest it in making more money, to buy more time, to feel useful. At the end of the day, people talk about happiness. I'm not about being happy. I think that's a moment in time. What I want to feel at the end of the day is I want to feel useful. I want to feel like I created something. I want to feel fulfilled. And when I look back at the days where I felt that way, it's usually spent with people I really admire, creating something really cool that was kind of hard to do, things that were going to impact a lot of other people. Don't make money the primary goal, but a tool to get to your goals. Which brings us to 13, which is your network is your net worth. Oprah famously said, surround yourself with only people who are going to lift you higher. If you think about it, you got to look around your peer group and ask yourself, are these people that are going to lift me up to achieve higher levels? My friend jokingly asked me, because I was saying that, I'm trying to upgrade my network. And he said, how many of your friends have private jets or gate codes? And at the time I was like, none? He's like, look, it's not about the money, but that's usually a good filter, because people that are kind of vibing at that level typically have a lot of cool stuff going on in your life. And if you want to get in a room where you're going to feel like an imposter, which is the key, then you got to make sure that those people are doing really big things. Most people make the mistake. They say you become the average of the 5 people you spend time with. I would actually, you become the average of the 5 people that you let influence you. I upgrade my relationships all the time. time. I look at my goals, I look at where I spend my time, and I gotta ask myself if these people are gonna help me and support me with my goals. If I feel like they'll slow me down, or they'll always talk down on me, or they're just not wanting to create a life at that level, unfortunately, I have to do a friend inventory. I have to evaluate where I'm at and find some new people. I can love people. I just can figure out where I can spend time with other folks that might get me to where I'm going a lot faster. So if you're fast growing, you need to look at who you're spending time with and cut anchors holding you back. Which brings us to number 14, which is define your why. When I started out, I used a lot of dark energy to build my life. I had a lot of people I wanted to prove wrong, like my buddy Mike's mom, who said I couldn't play together, to, my dad, who I didn't think at the time he believed in me, to everybody that ever doubted my ability to win. And I didn't give him a lot to go off of, but that was the energy to prove people wrong. But then once I achieved success and I became a multimillionaire, this actually needed to shift to light energy. And the reason why is that dark energy can work, it's just heavy. So to go bigger, you got to figure out your why, because that'll pull you forward, not push you forward using dark energy. It's more of a light energy pulling you forward. My why is huge. It's very simple. I want to become the person I needed most in my darkest days, and I want to teach everything I've learned that worked for me along the way. My friend Coach Burt says, you should go to bed tired, wake up hungry. A lot of people see me get up at 4 a.m. and go back and do everything with the kids, the family, the workouts, the team meetings, the podcast tours, the media stuff, flying around, all this stuff. What they don't get is my work ethic is a reflection of my gratitude. My gratitude for the opportunity, my creator giving me this chance. I just want to show up and give as much as I can towards my why. So I'm going to ask you, what are you optimizing your life for? Essentially, what are you trying to